Video on this deep dive of The Excellent Wife by Martha Peace, and I am ready to be done with this book. So I reread it for the podcast with Tia and Sheila, which I'll link to. Would love for you to catch it when you're able. Great conversation there. And then I thought, if I'm rereading this whole thing, I am going to do a deep dive. But it has been a slog to revisit this. I've kind of done it in a speed marathon where I've just talked about this book for a couple hours, edit it down later. But I've heard from so many of you how this was a piece, many of you in your young marriage, or for some of you, it was a very insidious resource that led to abuse and enabled abuse, or pressured you to stay in an abusive situation longer than you would have otherwise. And I just want to name that because I hear a lot of those stories, but I count it a privilege to bear witness to whatever people want to share with me. But I know often people aren't necessarily publicly sharing those stories. It's courageous to do that. It comes with a lot of shame. I think it was interesting to revisit this as a 45-year-old reflecting back over 20 years ago, and trying to find compassion for 23-year-old me, because I can read this now and think, what were you thinking? Run, girl, throw this in the trash. There are all kinds of reasons people are ensnared in teaching like this. And many of them, I know in my case, it was a sincere desire to please the Lord and a misplaced trust in teachers who were telling me with certainty the way to do that. I don't know what your story is or where your story intersects with this, but I just want to say I'm so sorry. I was introduced to it in a couple of ways in early marriage, but it didn't really stick. I wasn't in a church that really practiced this. I wasn't in a marriage where a husband was interested in this, but I knew about it on my shelves, and I knew it was kind of like the tough love kind of Christianity, the real mature Christians, or when things really got tough. If I really wanted to get serious about my Christian walk, this could be a resource I would turn to. So when things got really hard or overwhelming or out of control, I would turn to this. And in that sense, Martha does very well what she sets out to do. She sets out to speak to vulnerable women who are in difficult circumstances and overwhelmed by sorrow, loneliness, fear, anger, who don't know what to do in whatever their circumstance. She's writing specifically toward marriages, but biblical counseling does this a lot. People who are experiencing problems that they can't get rid of. And that's a really vulnerable place to be sold this combination of prosperity gospel promises, invitation to mature Christianity, a little bit of shaming and guilting, whatever things from family of origin and previous things that would contribute to this. I think of this as I read this, of all the Christian parenting teaching sets young adults up for this. Of course, you're ready to wonder, what have I done wrong? How am I disobeying God? He's looking for sin in my life. If Ted Tripp's or Ginger Hubbard's reproach was part of someone's parenting, this would feel so familiar. And there's all kinds of reasons people get ensnared in it. But it's heartbreaking and devastating, the consequences that can have. All the books I do a deep dive on, the primary reason I do a deep dive on them is because I still see them recommended by sincere Christian women who have influence over other women, and they're handed around, and this is one of them. And so I hope these videos find people who were like 22-year-old me, who were given this and who were attracted to it for whatever reason and had difficulty throwing it in the bin. I think some people are able to throw it in the bin right away and walk away. And for others, it's very difficult too. And if this is you, and if you're a Christian, I want to encourage you with the words of Galatians. As you'll remember, Galatians is a letter written to the early church who has been struggling as the Jewish Christians and the Gentile Christians came together. The Judaizers came and said, no, all converts need to do X, Y, and Z. This is how you need to be a Christian. And Paul writes to them and says, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? How quickly have you departed from the gospel of grace? And that is echoing loud in my spiritual imagination as I close this series and think of those who may still be drawn to this teaching, who may still have a hard time, who still may have it on their shelf. Whatever good in here is not worth the hold this can have on someone. And so I want to encourage you that it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Do not subject yourself again to a yoke of slavery. You are free in Christ. That means you are free in your marriage. You are free as a human being. And any choices you make to submit, to surrender, to love another, can only be freely given if you have the agency to say no. Otherwise, it's coercion. And this book is coercion. I encourage you to throw this one in the bin.